We're presently in the time of the 3 weeks, time leading up to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. These 3 weeks, Chaf Aleph Yom, the 21 days, are the times we call the Bein HaMetzarim, between the straits, the difficult times, time that is of national mourning, a time that we commemorate and think about all of the destructions that happened throughout history to Klal Yisrael. Destruction of the first and second Beis HaMikdash. It's a time, a time that even though it's Bein HaMetzarim, it's during the times of constraints and a time of difficulty and a time of challenge. Whoever desires to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to connect with Hashem, in this time, it's even, in a way, it's even a bigger opportune time to connect. These 21 days correspond to the 21 days of the beginning of the year between Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, and Hoshana Rabbah. And just like those are times that we connect through joy and introspection and tshuva, correspondingly, there's also a time that is these 3 weeks, and especially now in this week until we get to Tisha B'Av, is a time that we can connect through another type of avodah, another type of spiritual work. On the day of Tisha B'Av, we say in the Megillah Eicha, we say in the scroll of Eicha, we say a pasuk, a verse, that we say, Kar Alai Moed, the Shava Bachurai, Kar Alai Moed is called upon as a time of Moed, a time of encounter, a time of holiday. And this is what we say in the pasuk. This is what it says in the verse in the first chapter of Eicha, pasuk Tezvav. And because the Eicha, the book of Eicha, calls Tisha B'Av Moed, calls it actually a Moed, which normally is translated as a holiday, a Yom Tov. So that's why it, in fact, according to halacha, in Jewish law, we say that on Tisha B'Av, the day that we mourn the destruction of the first and second Beis HaMikdash, is also a time that we actually do not say tachnu, we don't say the penitence, we don't say the prayers that are usually omitted in a day of joy or a day of holiday, which is very kind of perplexing and kind of strange, that we're talking about a day of Tisha B'Av that's a time that we're mourning destruction and concealment and brokenness. And we call that time a moed, we all call that time a holiday. So we can understand this on multiple levels, and we'll try to get a little bit deeper and deeper. On the first level, we could understand this by a verse that says in Zechariah, in chapter 8:19. So the pasuk says in Zechariah, it's a famous verse, when it talks about the 4 fasts of the year. So the Torah, the Nach, says, the prophet says, Tzayim HaRevi, Tzayim HaChamishi, Tzayim HaShvi, Tzayim HaAsiri. This is the 4th month fast, which is in Tammuz, the 5th month fast, which is in Av, and then the Tzayim Gedalia and Asar B'Tevis, the 10th day of Tevis, is Yiyul L'Beis Yehuda. Will come a time when it will come to the house of Yehuda, to the Jewish people, L'sasan l'simcha l'moedim tovim. It'll be a sasan, a simcha, day of joy and festive celebrations. V'emes v'hashalom ohevu. So long as you seek truth and peace. This is the pasuk, and this is actually, this verse is brought down la'alacha. It's brought down in Jewish law. The Gemara brings this down with regards to the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. Daf Yud Ches in 18b, the Gemara talks about when we should fast, when we don't have to fast these fasts. Certainly the fasts of Shivas B'Tamuz and Tzayim Gedalia and Asar B'Tevis even. And the Gemara says that Bizman Sheyeh Shalom, when there's peace in this world, then we don't have to fast. And when there's no peace, then we have to fast. In a time when there's no peace and there's no opposite of peace, there's no war and there's no peace. So Ratzon Masanim, Ratzon Shein Masanim. If we want, we can fast. If we want, we don't have to fast. Lahalacha, according to Jewish law, it's established that we do fast. However, we see from the pasuk, we see already from the verse, that there's an indication that this time will be transformed into a day of joy and to Moedim Simcha. In fact, this is brought down in the Rambam. The Rambam in Maimonides, in the Rambam, the Halachas Hilchos Tainos, The Rambam rules in the end of Hilchas Tainus that kol hatainas asidim li batel, all the fast days will eventually be nullified. And then he continues, not only will they be nullified, but eventually they'll become Yom Tov Yemei Simcha. They'll become holidays and days of joy. And he brings down this pasuk, this verse, that this is also brought down in the Torah Shulchan Aruch, and this is the way it's ruled. So we could say that why is Tisha B'Av, why is the 9th of Av that commemorates and celebrates, or is dedicated to the memory of the destruction of the second and first Beis Hamikdash, why is it called a Moed? So it's not called a Moed for its present time, it's called a Moed al Shem Asid, on the future, that eventually this day will be transformed into a holy day, into a happy day, into a holiday. So it's called on the name of its future. A little bit deeper, we can say that this is not only a future in future tense, a future that we will receive in the future, but there's a glimmer of the future already in the present. We know there's a famous medrash, the medrash in Eichel says, and the Ramban discusses this in the Vikuach, that there's a medrash that says that Mashiach, the spark of Mashiach, the neshama of Mashiach, the soul of Mashiach, was born at the moment of the Churban, at the moment of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. That's when Mashiach was born. We see that the Gemara says, the Gemara in Bava Basra Tzadik Tes says that when the Jewish people are doing the will of the Creator, then the Keruvim, the two cherubs that were erected on top of the ark, the two cherubs were in an embrace. When they were not in a positive state, when they were not in a positive posture, so this was reflected also between the male and the female of these two cherubs. They disconnected. So when we, in our relationship with God, with the Creator, were in a state of embrace, this was reflected how the Keruvim, how the cherubs actually were related to each other. So when we were in a good state, they were good, and they were in embrace. And God forbid, when we were in a state of astray, if we distance ourselves, and we created an exile, an eternal and existential exile from our source, that also represented that these two were separated from each other. Then the Gemara says, that's one Gemara. The other Gemara says, in Yuma, the Gemara says that when they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, they saw that the Keruvim, the cherubs, are actually Ma'urim Zebazeh. They were in a state of embrace. Which Keruvim is a little bit difficult to understand, because in the first temple, in the first Beis Hamikdash, the Keruvim of the ark were already hidden before the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash, the second temple. There weren't any Keruvim, so simply it could be these are the cherubs, the Keruvim that were painted on the kaporos, on the parochos that was in front of that separated, in the partition that separated between the holy and the holy of holies. But there was an image that at the time of the destruction, at the moment, at the peak of the assuming most negative experience, the Keruvim were in a state of embrace. Why were they in a state of embrace? So it's brought down in Pinchas Karetz, brings down, it's brought down in Sascha in his name, that this has to do with another Gemara. The Gemara says in Yavamas, a person has to be intimate with his wife, and a man and wife should be intimate with each other. Spouses should be intimate with each other before they go on a trip, before they separate. So there's an idea of a certain sense of connection, of bringing together before there's a separation. But what happens when there is a getting together, of course, this also means that there's a release, a new spark is created, something new is created. Which means that at the time when there was the destruction, at the moment of the destruction, there was also the Keruvim Ma'urim Zebazeh, that the cherubs were in a state of embrace, and that represented that there was the possibility of the birth of the future Mashiach, which means that Mashiach, the concept of redemption, was not only your future, which is in the first analogy, that Yehavchu Sasal Simcha in the future time, but actually it was already in the present moment, at the moment already of the destruction, there was already the birth, the ibur, the impregnation of the possibility of the Messianic consciousness, of the Messianic idea that eventually will redeem the world. So this is a deeper level, not only the future, but the future that's even in the present. But let's try to understand it even on a deeper level. Why is Tisha B'Av, this day of mourning, why is it connected to an idea of Moed, a day of celebration? So what is the idea of Moed? What does Moed mean? So Moed, we find in the Torah itself, we see that the Mishkan is called an Oyel Moed, the tent of Moed. And then there's also Eila Moed Hashana, there's also the Moed Hashana. So Moed, there's a Moed that is connected to space, which is the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the base of the Mikdash, which is a place where a man encounters the divine in space. But Moed is also connected to an encounter in time. Just like there's a place that we can encounter Hashem in space, there's a time that we can encounter Hashem. Now, of course, we can encounter Hashem in every place and every time. But these are things that are sacred, that are kedusha, that are dedicated to this type of encounter. So now let's think about Oyel of Moed Hashana, and when Karolai Moed, that Tisha B'Av is called a Moed, let's understand that it's a time for an encounter. There's a very interesting medrash, that the medrash in Eicha Rabbah, in the beginning of the medrash, beginning of the medrash, on the book of Eicha, the medrash says that as the base of English is being destroyed, Hashem calls the angels on high. What exactly this means is for another time, but there's an encounter between God and angel. And Hashem asks Kaviyachol, the angel, he says, what is the way of a melech basvadam? What happens with a king that, God forbid, is in a state of mourning? What do kings on this earth do when they're in mourning? So Malach Hashar say, when a king is in mourning, they close the lights. The lanterns that are lit, they close the lights to show that it's a house of mourning. So Hashem says, okay, I'm going to close the lights. He says, what else do they do? He said they take off their shoes and they sit on the ground. He says, okay, I'm also going to do that. I'm going to take off my shoes, I'm going to sit on the ground. What else do mourners do? It says they sit doim, they sit silently. They're quiet. They're in a state of mourning. They're in shock. It says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, Kaviyachol, I'm going to do the same. So there's an idea of Tisha B'Av where Hashem's presence is present within the place of mourning, within the place of being on the floor, within the place where it's silence. There's another interesting Gemara that will help us understand this. Our sages tell us, and this is a popular Gemara that's repeated in Gemara Chagiga Yudalad, and it's also repeated in Yerushalmi and a Medrash. The Gemara says that there are four people, four great sages that entered into the mystical orchard. And they had a vision. Ben Azai, Ben Zaymer, Rabbi Akiva, and Elisha ben Avoya. This is a character, Elisha ben Avoya, has this mystical encounter. He chants the divine names. Like Rabbi Hanan or Rabbi Gon, and the Goinim say this is what happens. They have an inner vision, the Tisha says, and he has this mystical encounter. What happens with Elisha ben Avoya? He goes in to the spiritual encounter. When he comes out and he's called Acher. He becomes a heretic, and he is sort of divided. His self is divided into two. He's partly a committed Jew in some level. He's still interested in learning Torah and still interested in teaching Torah, but he lives a life completely like a Greek. And what happens in this experience, and this is where Rabbi Hanal explains this, B'Shem HaGoinim, in the name of the Goinim, is that he sees that maybe there is actually, God forbid, two forces in the universe. He has a mystical vision, and he sees that Matarton, the Sar Shaloilam, the prince of the world, the spiritual embodied quality of energy, of divine energy that flows into this world, he sees that Matarton is sitting. He sees that Metatron, or Matarton, how you call it in English maybe, that Matarton is sitting. And he says maybe there is the force of light, and maybe there's also a force of darkness. That there's actually two forces in the universe. There is God of beauty, God of light, God of joy, God in the place where things are working out. And maybe there's also a God of darkness. There's a God that is found and creates darkness. This is basically, in the ancient world, and it was much more relevant at that time, this is a Zoroastrian cult that believed that there are two forces in the universe. There's the forces of light and the forces of darkness. We actually say every single morning, Yoitzer Or Uvoyer Choshech, who creates, who forms light, who creates darkness. We change the verse in the pasuk in Nach. We change instead of voyer ra, who creates evil, voyer sakol. Hashem creates everything. Hashem is the creator of both life and darkness. So we to dismiss this idea, this is a rostering idea. Why does Elisha have this experience? And why does he come out of the experience like this? Because Elisha sees that they're sitting. He sees all of a sudden that Kaviyachol, as if there's an idea in heaven of sitting. His imagination, his idea of God, and his idea of Torah, is that God is beauty. God is standing. It's a posture of power, of beauty, and majesty. The Gemara tells us that the reason why Elisha ben Avui became a great sage is because his mother was once passing a house of study where some of the sages were studying. And his mother said, this is a beautiful study. They're studying so beautifully. It's a very intellectual, high level of intellectual study. I wish my son should become a scholar. So what attracted Elisha ben Avui's mother to the world of Torah was the beauty of Torah, was the majesty of Torah, was the yoifi of Torah, the beauty of the argument, the beauty of the seichel, of the intelligent argument. And this is what Elisha ben Avuya lived with. He lived with the sense of beauty, God and the beauty. The Gemara in Yerushalmi, in Megillah, in Perek Aleph says that like Pasak Mipuma, that Elisha always used to sing the Greek songs on his lips. So it means he was always connected to the world of the Greek, the world of majesty, of beauty, of poetry. This is what his connection with. When he saw sitting, that he saw Yashes, Choshech, Sisar, he saw that there's a place of darkness. There's a place of sitting, that Kadosh Baruch Hu, or the Malach, the angel of Kadosh Baruch Hu, is sitting. He didn't understand that. And the Gemara says, the Gemara Chagiga, two pages before that, Yubei says that Yashav Choshech Sisar, is it possible that there's darkness in front of Hashem? So the Gemara says, this is in the inner chamber and the outer chamber, which means that there is a type of idea of sitting, and it depends which reality we're talking about. A little earlier in the Gemara, in the same tract in Chagiga Daf Hayam the Beis, the Gemara says, "Bim b'starim tipcha nafshi." There's a verse that says that Hashem cries in its inner chamber, and the Gemara asked, the sages asked, Mika, Atziva l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is it possible that there is sadness in front of God? The pasuk says, "Oiz v'chet v'bim koima." Hashem is in the place of bim koima, in His place is only joy and power. And the Gemara says, "Hababat gavoi, hababat masarei." This is the inner chamber, this is the outer chamber, and there's an argument between the Rishonim which chamber is which. But the point is that there is a place, just like Hashem creates and is polygonal, infinity, beauty, majesty, revealed joy. Hashem also, whether it's in the inner chamber or the outer chamber, there's a place of darkness. Yashav Choshech Sisar, there's a place of Tipcha Nafshi, there's a place of crying. Nevuchim He Ba'aretz, place of sveikas, of doubt, of uncertainty, a place of lack of clarity. There is Ilana de Chaya, there's the tree of life, and there's Ilana de Sveika, and there's the tree of uncertainty. There's a tree of life where things always look clear and revealed and open and transparent, and a person feels good and feels connected and feels dveikus with Hashem, feels close to Hashem, feels that they have emunah and yira and ava, they feel that they have love and awe, and they feel a connection. And then there's also the world where things don't seem so clear. Now, this can be on a physical level, on a mental level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, where it seems to be broken, it seems to be dark, it seems to be concealed. And this doesn't necessarily only have to do with Tisha B'Av, but Tisha B'Av is sort of the headquarter. There's something that's called a parts of Yomim and a parts of Azmanim. Parts of Azmanim means the persona of time, which means throughout the year, there are different times of the year that personify this type of quality. And then there is a little bit of that quality throughout every single day of the year. There's Purim. Purim is the personification of transcendence, of joy and happiness. And then that's the Purim within the structure of time. And then there's the Purim of every single day. There's a little bit of Purim in every person's life. Tisha B'Av embodies all the quality of destruction and hardship and all the concealments and darkness and uncertainties that a person may experience in this world, some more, some less. And if you don't have it by yourself, maybe you see it by others. And that's also exile. That's the part of the day that's connected to Tisha B'Av. That's the Tisha B'Av within every single day. There's the Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av of the year, and then there's a little Tisha B'Av throughout every single day. And this is what Rabbi Akiva comes along to Elisha ben Avuya and tells him. Rabbi Akiva tells Elisha ben Avuya, and it tells all three characters that go into this mystical, transcendent state. He says, don't say water, water. Don't say that there's separation. And Rabbi Akiva was the only one that was nichnas b'shalom v'yatzav b'shalom. He was able to enter in peace and exit in peace. Because Rabbi Akiva was able to understand, in contrast to Elisha ben Avuya, who lived in the world of beauty and majesty and intellectual harmony and intellectual beautiful arguments, Rabbi Akiva also understood, because Rabbi Akiva came from that place. Rabbi Akiva came from a place where he was very poor. And not only physically poor, he was an Amoritz. He says that upon himself, that he was an Amoritz. He was an ignoramus. And Rabbi Akiva was a person that rose from a place of darkness and confusion and a place of choshech to a place of great heights. Rabbi Akiva became the greatest sage of the Talmud, the greatest sage that ever lived in the times of the Talmud. Everything follows the laws of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva became extremely wealthy. The Gemara in Yerushalmi says he married wealth, he achieved a lot of wealth, and yet Rabbi Akiva, despite the fact that he rose to such heights, the Gemara also says that his hand was the hand of Aniyim. What he was busy doing with his money was giving out charity. So Rabbi Akiva was a person that was able to understand the high and the low, the light and the darkness. Was able to understand that it's Hashem Echad, it's one God. And Hashem is present in our highs, and Hashem is present in our lows. Hashem is present in the oil, and just like Hashem creates light, Hashem creates darkness. Just like Hashem has the potential of the infinite light, Hashem also has the koyach hagvul, the potential of finitude. Hashem includes and embraces all. It's the klal that's higher than the prats, the higher than the details. This is the relationship that Rabbi Akiva had to life and to Torah and to Yiddishkeit. And this is what Tisha B'Av is all about. Tisha B'Av is a time that, yes, Tisha B'Av, we sit on the floor, and Tisha B'Av, we're in a state of daim, hanig daim, like an abba, like a person that's mourning. And because Hashem is samchalev, and we're not supposed to learn Torah, at least not Torah that brings us joy, and maybe be a little bit sad and sit on the floor. And if you're sitting on the floor, generally, you're not sitting on a carpet. You're probably getting a little dusty and dirty. You haven't took a shower for a while. And certainly if you're really careful, maybe for a longer period than just a while. So you're maybe a little bit smelly and a little bit dirty, and you're sitting on the floor and you're a little sad. And this is what Tisha B'Av says. Tisha B'Av says that it's a moed. It's a Yom Tov. It's a time that we can encounter and connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu at this very moment. Right at this very moment. We don't need a future or the future that's in the present. The state that we're in, no matter which situation we're in, no matter the condition that we find ourselves, whether it's once a year or a few minutes every single day, if you find yourself in that situation, do not despair. Do not say that Hashem is not present there. You can have a moed, you can have an encounter with Hashem's presence, the makim hachoshech, in the place of the darkness. Because just like Hashem is yotzer oyer, just like Hashem creates life and forms life, so Hashem also is a boyer hachoshech, creates darkness. And Hashem is sitting with us and being with us on the floor in our constricted state, in our meitzar state. We have an opportunity to connect Him because Hashem, in the language, in the image of the medrash we quoted before, Hashem sits down on the floor and is shoeless and sits down. All the majesty of Hashem is now tipcha nafshi. Hashem is crying for Gavos Shel Yisrael that was lost, for the greatness of Klal Yisrael that was lost. That God willing, b'meir v'yameinu, already this year and already today, we should be zoicha, we should merit that it should literally be Yahavchu L'Yam Tovim L'Moedim Tovim Be'emes Hashalom V'Ahevu.